I said to him, "Man up," in front of our friends. I never anticipated he would walk away because of it. He would abandon me, not for something of that nature. Yet, it transpired. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Emily, age 30, and what follows is my heartfelt confession. Several weeks have passed since the events unfolded, and I find myself struggling to fully grasp the reality of it all. I never intended to drive him to that point, all I sought was for him to find his footing. I'm merely suggesting that his behavior was unnecessary. Surely, we've faced greater challenges before, haven't we? Yet, it was in that moment, as I urged him to gather his courage before our friends, that he finally broke. Yet, the understanding eludes me. We gathered at our friend's home, laughter and drinks flowing as they always do. My husband Ryan sat in silence, a quiet presence in the room. He's not one for many words, yet he didn't utter a single thing regarding the game. Typically, he would engage in the discussion or throw out a witty remark, yet there he sat, fixated on his beer as if the burdens of existence rested heavily upon him. It seemed to irk me, in a way. We have children to care for, and responsibilities that demand our attention. Indeed, challenges abound, yet here I stand, managing it all with resolve. Ensuring the children reach school on time, managing the bills, and striving to maintain the integrity of the home. What's the story with him? What could possibly explain his chaotic behavior? Initially, I endeavored to exercise a degree of subtlety. I would cast him a few sidelong looks, silently urging, "Come on, Ryan, engage with me." Yet he remained steadfast. It began to seem as though I was the sole architect of the evening's enjoyment. At that moment, I simply spoke my mind. I can't quite recall my previous words, but in a moment of spontaneity, I exclaimed, "Man up, Ryan." I suppose I was jesting, yet truthfully, who am I deceiving? I was not. In a moment of frustration, I uttered words that were unwise. All were enveloped in laughter. Yet Ryan, he simply stood still. He gazed at me as though I had just delivered a public slap across his face. To him, it lacked any semblance of humor. He fixed his gaze on me for a fleeting moment, then turned his eyes elsewhere. The entire room seemed to fall into a hushed stillness. The murmurs of the crowd faded into the background as the rhythmic thump of my heartbeat echoed in my ears. I had witnessed Ryan's anger in the past, yet this was unlike anything I had encountered before. He remained silent, offering no defense. Instead, he simply rose and exited the room. It was beyond my comprehension. What was that intended to convey? He was unable to take a joke? I had expressed my regrets on several occasions for my foolish remarks. I find myself wondering if perhaps I wished for him to embody more of the charm and charisma of those characters we see on television. Indeed, resilient, humorous, powerful. However, that was simply peculiar. He was behaving as though I had committed an unpardonable offense. There I remained, enveloped in an unsettling tension, utterly bewildered by the events that had just unfolded. I truly believed it wasn't as significant as everyone made it out to be. We had our share of moments, such as that occasion when I splurged excessively on various items for the house, and he remained remarkably calm. He simply took care of it. We consistently navigated our challenges together. What made this experience so distinct? Yet, it seems that is precisely where the trouble began. I was unaware of the extent to which I had driven him away. For years, I had been engaged in it, almost instinctively, without a second thought. It seems to have begun with the allure of wealth. I have often struggled with it, yet he has consistently been there to lend a hand in mending it. I would indulge, and he would cover the cost. Forever. However, I have recently observed that he has become increasingly reserved regarding the matter. I simply couldn't comprehend it. Why couldn't he simply release it? I understand that evening was not solely about my urging him to be more assertive in the presence of our peers. It was everything else that accumulated over time. The unrelenting strain surrounding finances, the silence that would envelop him whenever we broached the subject of what lay ahead, or the moments when I stumbled once more, leaving him to pick up the pieces. To be frank, I perceived his behavior as somewhat theatrical. Yet, as he stepped out in that manner, an unsettling realization washed over me: something was profoundly amiss. Initially, I believed he would return and express his regrets. Perhaps he would even concede that he was overreacting. Alas, that is not the case. He failed to return that night, nor did he the following one. And then, when he finally reached out, all he uttered was, "I need some space." I truly found myself at a loss for words in response to that. "Cosmos? What do you mean?" I had allowed him the freedom he needed for years. He simply had to move past it. That was my perspective. However, when he failed to appear at the child's soccer game the following weekend, I realized the situation was dire. Ryan never overlooked those. Not at all. I can't deny the guilt that lingered within me, yet a part of my mind questioned, what exactly was my wrongdoing? If he couldn't manage my words, how could he possibly navigate anything else that life might throw his way? Initially, I felt no remorse whatsoever. I mentioned that I was, yet it didn't quite resonate with me why he felt such distress. I found it to be a rather foolish remark. And if he chose not to transcend that, perhaps he wasn't the man I believed him to be. In retrospect, I find myself uncertain. I find myself regretting it now, yet truthfully, I still believe I am in the right. He ought to have been more resolute regarding it. I was merely attempting to encourage him to assert himself, wasn't I? Yet he did not, and now I find myself here, pondering the mystery of his disappearance. Perhaps I overstepped my bounds with him. Perhaps I erred. Am I truly the sole architect of this predicament? I'm uncertain. Do you believe he might be exaggerating his response? Is it worth my effort to attempt a resolution? I'm beginning to sense that this is the moment we've been waiting for. Perhaps, just perhaps, I find myself at a loss for how to mend it. I truly believed he would return. I kept reassuring myself that this wasn't something capable of dismantling an entire marriage, was it? An unwise remark made in the presence of our friends? He would eventually find his way past it, and we would continue forward. I repeated that to myself over and over. Yet he did not return. He made no effort to engage in a conversation about it. I'm aware of the thoughts that might be crossing your mind. Is this my responsibility, then? I regret the words I chose to express. Yet, I found it difficult to comprehend. 2 weeks had passed when I finally laid eyes on him again, the first time since that fateful night. The children were in the company of his sister. I found myself without a valid reason to refrain from reaching out. I picked up the phone and dialed his number. Apprehension coursed through me, yet action beckoned insistently. I refused to remain passive while he simply walked away over something trivial. At last, when he spoke, his tone was devoid of any inflection. His voice lacked anger, yet it also conveyed a distinct absence of concern. "Hey," I remarked, making an effort to maintain a cheerful tone. "How have you been faring?" "Good," he replied. That was the moment. That was everything I received. "It seems we have a conversation to engage in." Regarding the events that transpired, I spoke, my voice trembling slightly, yet I endeavored to maintain my composure. I aimed to avoid any hint of desperation. I hoped he wouldn't perceive me as a disheveled soul, pleading for his return. Yet, he appeared rather reluctant to engage in conversation as well. "I don't believe there's anything left to discuss, Emily," he said, and the mere sound of his voice sent a chill deep into my chest. "Your words were spoken, and this isn't the first instance of your pressure upon me. You've been at this for quite some time." His words struck me with the force of a blow. I felt the urge to contest, to justify my stance, yet there was an undeniable quality in his voice that held me back. He sounded weary, as if he had reached his limit. That sensation filled me with disdain. I despised the sensation that he was relinquishing our bond. Yet, in a certain light, I grasped the reasons behind his feelings. I had been stumbling through the months, completely unaware of my missteps. Perhaps I did, yet I lacked the motivation to amend it. "I hadn't intended it in that way," I murmured, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "It was merely a jest, Ryan. You are well aware of my nature." Frustration was all that lingered within me, nothing more. "It was never my intention to cause you pain." Yet, the stillness on the other side was overwhelming. He let out a deep sigh. "I understand that your intentions were not to cause me pain, Emily, yet that is precisely the issue. Your words cut deeper than you know, leaving a mark that lingers long after they're spoken. When you leave me with the sense that I fall short, I refuse to be the kind of person who passively endures your attempts to undermine me. I can no longer expend my efforts to mend what you seem indifferent to creating." I stood still, grappling with the weight of his words. In a certain sense, he was indeed correct. I had never truly grasped the extent of what I placed upon him. The chaos of finances, the turmoil of emotions, everything intertwined. Each time I stumbled, I found myself hoping he would come to my rescue. I assumed it was merely a part of his profession, you see. He stood as the husband, the provider, the protector. And what of me? Indeed, I was simply myself. I believed I could escape unscathed, yet he was no longer allowing me to slip through the cracks. He grew weary of always being the one to tidy up my chaos, and I despised the fact that he was absolutely correct. I apologized once more, yet the words seemed devoid of substance. The apology felt insufficient, a mere whisper against the weight of what had transpired. It was not the solution to all problems. Merely uttering the words wouldn't suffice to restore the status quo. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Emily," he said, his voice low yet resolute. "I require something beyond this. I seek a companion who values my efforts, who recognizes and cherishes what I contribute, rather than one who merely anticipates my continual repairs while they persist in causing chaos." It was as if the very earth had vanished beneath my feet. He was truly expressing it. He found himself deeply contemplating the idea of departure. Yet, I found myself becoming defensive. A switch seemed to flip in my mind, and acceptance eluded me entirely. I needed to convey to him that I wasn't entirely flawed. I was not the terrible person he portrayed me as. We built a family, we shared a life intertwined. I simply couldn't bear the thought of losing everything I had worked for. "Do you really believe that I don't value you?" I retorted, my voice more cutting than I intended. "Do you really believe I'm oblivious to your every action? I'm simply endeavoring to navigate my existence, Ryan. You fail to comprehend. I find myself navigating the chaos of the children, the relentless bills, the upkeep of the house, it's all consuming. And I make an effort, all right? I make an effort. At times, I find myself stumbling." He hesitated before responding. He was making an effort to maintain his composure, yet the frustration in his silence was unmistakable. "Constantly stumbling isn't a valid justification, Emily," he remarked after a lengthy silence. "You fail to acknowledge your own errors. You make no effort to transform. That is precisely the issue at hand." His words struck with a force unmatched by any debate we had engaged in prior. He was indeed correct. I failed to assume responsibility. I did not. I never did. I consistently discovered a means to attribute the fault to him, my situation, the children, or any number of other factors. Yet, I never gazed upon my own reflection. I never considered, perhaps I'm the one who's causing all the chaos. And that struck me, as if I had been caught off guard. Yet, rather than confronting it, I resorted to my usual response. I diverted the conversation. "Well, I'm not perfect, Ryan," I remarked, attempting to maintain a casual tone, yet it emerged with an air of defensiveness. "No one is without flaw. I'm not expecting you to achieve perfection. I implore you to grasp this. Perfection is an unattainable ideal, and it's a truth we both share." Yet he refrained from taking the bait. He didn't respond with the sharpness I had anticipated. He let out another sigh. And then he uttered the words that would resonate within me for all time. "Perhaps I am not the epitome of perfection, yet I have made my efforts. I find myself questioning how much longer I can persist when it appears you lack any concern." And thus, it came to an end. In that instant, it dawned on me that he could truly be finished. Words eluded me in the aftermath of that moment. I remained quiet, a heavy burden pressing down in my chest. The stillness that enveloped us was palpable. In all honesty, I found myself at a loss for how to mend it. I found myself questioning whether I truly desired it any longer. As I sat there, my gaze fixed on my phone, a realization began to dawn on me. This was not merely about the foolish remark I uttered in the presence of our friends. This encompassed all aspects. Let me share a bit about myself. Concerning him, who we are. Perhaps, in truth, I was the one who required transformation, yet I found myself unwilling to acknowledge it. Not at this moment. The days that followed that conversation were nothing short of dreadful. I found myself endlessly revisiting each moment in my mind. The cadence of his speech, the inflection of his voice, the stillness that followed. In all honesty, a wave of embarrassment washed over me. In the depths of my being, I recognized that the blame lay squarely with me. I realized that I was the catalyst that had driven him to this juncture. Yet, I found myself unable to utter the words. I found myself reluctant to acknowledge the possibility that I could have been mistaken. It seems I may have shattered it all. I considered, I am not the villain in this narrative. I am merely a human being. He's making a mountain out of a molehill. I endeavored to present an image of normalcy, as if nothing had shifted beneath the surface. Yet it had. The truth was as evident as the sun in the sky. My perception of him had irrevocably shifted. What could possibly be more disheartening? I was at a loss for how to resolve it. I found myself unprepared to confront the reality of the situation. As I pondered the matter further, it became increasingly clear to me how deeply I had underestimated his significance in my life. I had never considered it from that perspective before. I was unaware of the extent to which he had been the glue binding everything in my life. He had consistently been the one to ensure that the bills were settled, that the children received everything essential, that we maintained our stability. What about me? I found myself constantly pouring our limited resources into frivolous purchases. It was entirely his duty to rectify the situation that led us into debt and to take action. I acted with abandon, and what could be worse? I acted out of self-interest. Yet, I found myself unable to admit it. Not at this moment. The truth was too daunting to confront. For if I were to do so, I would be compelled to confront all the ways in which I had faltered. I found myself unprepared to take that step. It was 2 days later when he reached out to me. His voice carried a gentleness that took me by surprise. "May we have a conversation?" he inquired. For the first time in what felt like ages, I detected a trace of vulnerability in his voice. After a moment of doubt, I ultimately agreed. I couldn't allow matters to remain in this state. A conversation was necessary. I wished to mend it, yet I found myself at a loss for how to proceed. We arranged a rendezvous at a cozy coffee shop. Throughout the entire process of preparing, a sense of unease lingered within me. My stomach was in turmoil. I found myself lost in contemplation, pondering the words I would choose for my apology, the precise sentiments I would convey. I rehearsed it repeatedly in my mind, yet it seemed as though nothing would ever measure up. Apologies had lost their moment, hadn't they? Upon our meeting, he appeared weary. His eyes bore the weight of shadows, and he seemed a stranger to me, no longer the man I had once married. He appeared utterly exhausted. He failed to welcome me with his customary warmth. He withheld the embrace I had come to rely on during our encounters. He merely nodded in my direction before settling into the chair opposite me. I settled into my seat, striving for tranquility, yet the anxiety continued to gnaw at me from within. I parted my lips, ready to voice my thoughts, but he beat me to it, his words cutting through the silence. "Are you aware of the extent of the harm you've inflicted, Emily?" he inquired, his tone subdued yet resolute. His words carried an immense weight, though he spoke without raising his voice. "He doesn't see it, do you? Countless efforts I've made to mend what was broken. Countless efforts have been poured into making it succeed. Yet, with each word you utter, with every action taken thoughtlessly, it feels as though you are gradually eroding the very foundation of what we have constructed together." It struck me with the force of 1,000 weights. I believed I was merely experiencing fleeting instances of annoyance, yet to him, it represented something far deeper. Unbeknownst to me, my actions and words were inflicting harm upon him. I didn't mean to hurt you," I said, my voice trembling. That was the sole expression I could muster. No other thoughts came to mind. Yet, it fell short, as it always did. His eyes met mine, piercing and intense. "Your intentions may not be to cause me pain, Emily, yet the hurt persists. Your actions consistently create distance between us, and you seem unaware of it. You believe I should merely remain passive and accept this, don't you? This is not the way it operates." Not any longer. I felt the need to stand up for myself. "I wish to convey that you seem to be missing the point. I feel the weight of pressure as well. I am striving to give my utmost effort. Yet, I was aware that this was not the reality. I was not performing at my highest potential. I found myself fleeing from the weight of responsibility. I acted out of self-interest. And within the depths of my being, I was aware of it. I never intended to drive you away," I confessed, my voice trembling. "I'm often left in a state of uncertainty, unsure of my direction much of the time. I make mistakes. I am aware that I do. Yet, I never intended for it to unfold in this manner. It was never my intention to evoke these feelings in you." He paused before replying, and for an instant, it seemed as if the entire universe was suspended in anticipation. He let out a sigh, and when he finally found his voice, it was softer, tinged with resignation. "I'm not sure you fully understand, Emily. I wonder if you will ever truly understand. Your apologies ring hollow, for your deeds betray your true intentions. I'm at a loss for how many more attempts I can make to mend this situation when it feels like you lack any concern for your actions. It's utterly draining." His words pierced through, yet they held an undeniable truth. Whenever I stumbled, I anticipated his swift forgiveness and a seamless continuation of our journey together. I never truly endeavored to transform. I had never truly considered the extent to which it was affecting him. I don't want to lose you, Ryan, I murmured, my voice barely rising above a whisper, yet it was the undeniable truth. In that moment, it struck me with undeniable clarity just how much was at stake if I remained passive. I was not merely losing my husband. Everything was slipping away from me. My family, my life, my children, and it all unraveled due to my relentless mistakes. I don't know what you want from me anymore, he said, his voice icy, as if he were closing off completely. You are no longer the woman I once vowed to cherish. I find myself lost in the shadows of your identity, uncertain if I possess the strength to continue down this path. A sharp ache pierced through my chest. Those words, they pierced the soul. He had reached his limit. He had reached his limit, and I found myself at a loss for how to rekindle his spirit. I remained motionless, caught in a moment of stillness. His words reverberated within me, each one cutting deep. I find myself lost in the shadows of your identity. My hair had vanished from the room, as if it had been drawn into another realm. My heart pounded in my chest, yet clarity eluded me. I found myself submerged in the weight of my own errors, utterly lost and unsure of how to navigate my way back to the surface. I parted my lips, yearning to articulate my thoughts, yet the words eluded me. I extended my hand toward him, yet he recoiled, his eyes vacant and frigid. What was unfolding between us? There was a time when I could share anything with him. At that moment, it seemed as though each word I uttered only deepened the turmoil. Ryan, I murmured, please don't abandon me. He slowly shook his head, his jaw clenching tightly. I'm not abandoning you, Emily, but I can't continue down this path. I can no longer maintain the facade that all is well when it clearly is not. You are shattering my very essence. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes, yet I held them back. This moment is not the right one, nor is this place. I refused to allow him to witness my unraveling. Countless missteps had marked my journey, and at last, I was confronting the gravity of my actions. Yet, beneath the surface, a struggle persisted within me. I found myself at a loss for words, struggling to express an apology that could truly mend the situation. Apologies escaped my lips, my voice trembling. I made a mistake. I acknowledge my actions, yet I find myself at a loss for how to remedy the situation. What steps can I take to resolve this issue? Ryan's gaze met mine, a blend of exasperation and sorrow etched across his features. It cannot be resolved in a single day. One cannot merely utter an apology and anticipate that all will be well. The extent of the damage is overwhelming, Emily. I have stood by your side, pouring all that I possess into this family, into our bond. Yet, I find it increasingly difficult to continue giving when there seems to be no effort on your part to meet me even halfway. A primal urge to scream welled up within me. I longed to implore him to see that my intentions had never been to ruin anything. Yet, I was aware he held the truth. I had not been making an effort. I had not been fulfilling my part of the agreement. I found myself crafting excuses, attributing my shortcomings to everything and everyone except my own actions. Ryan, if you would be so kind. I am willing to do whatever it takes. I will transform. I promise I will. All I seek is an opportunity. Desperation seeped into my voice as I spoke. He took his time to respond. Instead, he gazed into his coffee cup, as if pondering whether my words held any truth worth embracing. His eyes reflected a deep weariness. He had moved past his anger. He was simply weary, exhausted from the struggle for something that no longer seemed deserving of the battle. My faith in your words has begun to waver. He finally spoke, his voice soft yet laden with weight. Whenever I hold on to the hope that you might transform, you inevitably surprise me with yet another unexpected action. It feels as though your attention is elsewhere. I find myself at a loss for words. His words struck me like a blow to the heart. I longed to unleash a cry, yet I remained motionless, engulfed by the sensation of being the most diminished version of myself. The woman I had transformed into was a stranger to me now. In all honesty, fear gripped me. I yearned to mend it all. I sought to set things aright. Yet, I understood, beneath the surface, that mere words wouldn't suffice to mend it all. Merely uttering an apology would not suffice. I could not simply anticipate that all would return to its former state. I understand that I've made mistakes, yet my love for you remains, I declared, striving to project assurance. Yet, it remained merely a whisper of what it ought to have been. With a heavy sigh, he ran his hand over his face, a gesture of palpable frustration. I doubt you truly understand, Emily. Not in the manner that I require. Not in a manner that will bring about any change. Perhaps the moment has come for us to cease the charade. Perhaps we should confront the reality that we are no longer the same individuals we were at the beginning of our marriage. I found myself unable to meet his gaze any longer. It seemed as though my entire universe was crumbling around me. All that I once considered a given, the love, the stability, the family we had forged, was gradually slipping through my fingers. Yet, I found myself powerless to intervene. "I'm not perfect, Ryan," I whispered, my voice trembling as I fought to hold back a sob. "I am aware that I am not. Yet, I implore you, do not turn your back on me." For a fleeting instant, his eyes revealed a hint of vulnerability, yet soon the barriers re-established themselves. "I can no longer continue down this path, Emily. I seek a companion who will steadfastly support me, someone who will always be present in my life. I have poured out all that I am, and now I find myself hollow. I find myself devoid of any offerings to share." In that fleeting moment, the truth dawned upon me: it was too late. He rose from the table, and it seemed as though the very earth beneath me split apart. With a gentle tone, he expressed his regret, saying, "I'm sorry, but I can't continue down this path. I have reached my limit." As he turned and departed, a profound realization washed over me. I realized I had gone beyond the limits with him. I realized he was gone, and the weight of that truth rested solely on my shoulders. The ensuing months unfolded in a haze. I endeavored to maintain my composure for the sake of the children, yet everything felt irrevocably altered. Ryan departed, and despite my awareness that I was the architect of this turmoil, I found myself powerless against the gnawing guilt that consumed me whole. There were moments when I felt as though I was being enveloped by an overwhelming weight. In the stillness of the night, I found myself wide awake, reflecting on the opportunities I had squandered, the fleeting moments I had overlooked. And then, one fateful evening, I caught sight of him once more. Though it was fleeting, merely a handful of words shared, it was sufficient to awaken me to the truth of the matter. He had reached his limit. He had progressed beyond that chapter. And no words of remorse, no pleas of desperation could summon him back. Everything that transpired was on me. Now, I found myself solitary, grappling with the repercussions of my choices. The weight of regret, the sharp sting of pain, the suffocating embrace of loneliness, everything I had desperately sought to evade came tumbling down upon me. That day will forever remain etched in my memory. I will always remember the moment I lost it all, a consequence of my own selfishness.